Wanna think about times to come, and not about the things that you've done. If your life was bad to you, just think what tomorrow will do. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Don't stop, it'll soon be here. It'll be better than before. Yesterday's gone, yesterday's gone. All I want is to see you smile. If it takes just a little while, I know you don't believe that it's true. I never meant any harm to you. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Don't stop, it'll soon be here. It'll be better than before. Yesterday's gone, yesterday's gone. Don't stop thinking about tomorrow. Don't stop, it'll soon be here. It'll be better than before. Yesterday's gone, yesterday's gone. Don't you look back. Don't you look back. Don't you look
Good morning, and welcome to the 10th Best Practices webinar featuring local jurisdictions that are embracing the small housing movement in California and really digging deep to come up with new innovations and ways to make small housing work. Today, we will feature folks from the County of San Mateo, including a number of different departments, as well as one of their nonprofit partners, Hello Housing. And before we get started, I'd like to thank our major sponsors for the webinar today, Union Bank and Facebook, as well as our other series sponsors, including Cross Country Mortgage, the Stowers team, Umpqua Bank, Home Lending, the Building Industry Association of the Bay Area, the Bridge Association of Realtors, Allen Matkins, and Housing Trust Silicon Valley. And then I also want to thank our promotional partners who are really other mission-aligned organizations in government, in the nonprofit and academic space that are all working together to try and solve California's crushing housing crisis. So thank you for all of our promotional partners for participating in this conversation about how to get housing to work better in every California community. Also, I want to just highlight some of the work that's happening at the Casita Coalition. If you don't already know, we've got many volunteers working in working groups, over 40 individuals who volunteer on a variety of committees to give their professional expertise and time to help provide better public information so that everyone has access to the best available knowledge about how to do this stuff well, including a garage conversion guidance memo, because there's a lot of questions for homeowners about that, as well as an ADU finance summary. So those are available on our website and also on the website of the California State Department of Housing and Community Development. And then this morning, I'm very honored, and I think we're all delighted to be joined by Assemblymember Marc Berman, who represents San Mateo County, among others, in his district, which includes San Mateo and parts of Santa Clara County. Assemblymember Berman is one of the most successful legislators in Sacramento, with a huge number of bills to his name, which is a testament both to his creativity. We got Assemblymember Berman still muted, in case that's on our side. Just there you go. Now you're here. And he, like so many members of the legislature, they know that housing is front and foremost on the question of constituents, of their local governments, and in our effort to all try and do better together. We're really grateful, Assemblymember Berman, to have you join us this morning. So welcome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks, Denise, so much for having me. Thank you for putting on these webinars that I think are so important and so helpful as we all try to work together to build more housing of all types in our communities. And I think I was asked to kind of come and talk about, how do I get to yes? How, as an assembly member representing northern Santa Clara County and southern San Mateo County, some communities that have very vocal anti-housing kind of organizations and voices in our communities, but yet I've got a very staunchly pro-housing record in the state assembly, and frankly I had that on the Palo Alto City Council before. So how is it that I decide to vote yes on a lot of these bills, even though there's a small but very vocal minority of folks in my communities who raise a lot of ruckus about a lot of these things? And the answer to that really begins with my time on the Palo Alto City Council. And when I served on the Palo Alto City Council, I think I imagine a lot of you have been in local government meetings, city council meetings, and planning and transportation committee meetings, and that in these meetings we deal with a lot of kind of hyperbolic and exaggerated rhetoric. Whether it's a developer that's coming and asking for approval of a project, and maybe the city council says, hey, you need to add another 5 parking spaces, or you need to add another 9 parking spaces to a commercial development, and the developer throws up their hands and they say, no way, that'll make it totally financially unfeasible, and if you make me do that, I'm walking away and I'm never going to build this project. And the council makes them do it, and they build the project and they make a lot of money. Or it's the community. Let's say you want to, the city council is discussing an affordable housing project, and you say, you know what, for an affordable housing project, we're willing to provide an exemption of 5 feet to an existing height limit that we have in our community. And neighbors of the project and people from the community come and they say, oh my God, if you do that, it's going to be the Manhattanization of Palo Alto, and you're going to block out the sun, and you're going to totally destroy our quality of life, and you're going to make my house worth half of what it's worth today. And you approve the project, and there's negligible impact on traffic. The sun still shines in these neighborhoods, and yet you add housing. And so I saw all of this firsthand when I served on the Palo Alto City Council. But what I also saw, and what I don't think is hyperbole, what I don't think is exaggerated rhetoric, is that we have a absolutely severe housing crisis in Silicon Valley, in the Bay Area and across California, but it's especially acute in my district, and in Silicon Valley, on the peninsula, in northern Santa Clara County, in between San Francisco and San Jose. And so at the end of the day, and I've seen it. One of my first meetings that I had when I was on the Palo Alto City Council, I was 32 years old. I'd just gotten elected, and we were having a joint meeting with our school district, our school board, to talk about what to do with this site in Palo Alto. For those of you who know Palo Alto, I'm talking about Coverly. And the Palo Alto school board said, absolutely not. We don't want to do anything, because we want to maintain this as a possible 3rd high school in Palo Alto. And I thought, 3rd high school? Nobody who's young and having kids can afford to move here. You don't need to worry about a 3rd high school. I was new, so I didn't say it. I didn't say what I thought, because I was still new and still a little nervous. But I thought, y'all talk to any of my peers who are getting ready to start a family, and ask them how many of them, unless they're inheriting their house from their parents, unless they are getting a massive amount of financial support from their parents, or unless they somehow struck it rich in tech. They are not people at that point. I was in my early 30s. People my age were not moving to Palo Alto. We're not having kids, and that's what we've seen. I got an email. My daily Palo Alto weekly email news aggregator, and one of their main articles is about how the youth age population in Santa Clara County went down 5%, according to this latest census. And I'm sure that's happening in San Mateo County as well. And schools are closing because their school age population is going down. The amount of funding they're getting from the state is going down, and they're forced to have those difficult conversations. And when people come and they talk about quality of life, that is quality of life. Quality of life is, can your community keep enough neighborhood schools open so that your child can walk or bike to a school nearby them? Quality of life is, can teachers afford to live near the schools where they work so that they can come in early to help a student who's struggling, or stay late to, coach the debate team, or advise the debate club, or coach the badminton team, or whatever. That, to me, quality of life is can your favorite, because they can they afford to pay their staff enough to live somewhere near where they work. There were stories a couple of years ago about a restaurateur in Palo Alto / Mountain View who literally bought a house and provided subsidized rent to her top restaurant staff so that she could keep top restaurant staff. When somebody has to buy a house to provide subsidized rent so that they don't lose their best staff at a restaurant, your community's broken. It's broken. And you're going to lose the socioeconomic diversity that I think makes, or growing up here in the 80s and 90s, that I think made this area really, really special. And even then, it was a middle to upper middle class community. I'm not trying to claim it was that affordable even back then. So that's how I get to yes. That's how I feel really, that's how I sleep well at night. Even when I'm getting cussed at, or people in the community are emailing my home address to 250 people on their listserv, that's not gonna intimidate me from doing what I think is best for the greater community. And I know it's not going to intimidate you all to do what you think is best to provide the housing, to create the housing that we desperately need here in Silicon Valley. And so, thank you. I know I've already gone past my time, but really want to thank everybody for what you're doing to build housing of all types. Early on, when I got elected to the state assembly, a colleague of mine who later became a very close friend and is now mayor of San Diego, Todd Gloria, we were having a conversation about housing, and he said, we need to stop talking about affordable housing, and we need to talk about housing affordability. Affordable housing, as you all know, is subsidized housing for people who meet a certain income threshold or eligibility. Housing affordability is all types of housing, including non-subsidized housing, but that just is smaller and therefore by nature more affordable. I know y'all are going to be talking a lot about ADUs, which are a critical key to addressing our housing shortage in a way that is very it's very unoffensive to people because they don't see it, because it's in people's backyards. So it's not like it's changing the visual dynamics of a neighborhood. Just on that note, real quick, and Denise, you might have mentioned this, but the state recently this year had a huge budget with a lot of money for housing and homelessness, but $81 million in particular to expand the California Housing Finance Agency's accessory dwelling unit financing program. And with this additional funding, it was announced that the state's going to be providing a new ADU grant program that will provide as much as $25,000 in assistance to low to moderate income homeowners to build accessory dwelling units on their property. So not only did I stream of consciousness unload on y'all all of my thoughts, but hopefully I provided something that was helpful to you moving forward. So with that, I'll stop talking, but just thanks. I know it's tough, but I think the strong majority of community members are, recognize how big of a housing crisis we're in, recognize the need to build more housing in our communities, and y'all are helping us do that. So I'm appreciative of all that you do.
Thank you so much. Just hearing your passion and your commitment reminds me about why I do this work. This is my volunteer gig, and someone who's over 60 and looking at kids who've left the state and moving across the country, and parents who can't afford to live there anymore. And it breaks my heart every day. And so thanks for making it real and reminding us what's really at stake in this housing debate. We're losing our kids, we're losing our teachers, we can't run our businesses. It is a crisis, not just of housing, but of the entire character of our communities. And I know everyone on the Casita Coalition call really thinks this work matters. And so we're so grateful for your leadership and for, frankly, the leadership of everybody on this San Mateo team that's going to speak today, because they are doing the really hard legwork to get these small housing forms to work. So we appreciate your leadership. Keep it up. And we'll keep digging into the trenches and seeing how we can get more housing done that gets us all to yes. So thanks a lot.
Perfect. That sounds like a great plan. Thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye. And now I'm very excited to introduce the presentation panel from San Mateo County. San Mateo was one of the first adopters of accessory dwelling unit forward-looking standards and programming. They have done tremendous community outreach, and since they've been doing it longer than many local governments and many county governments, they have a depth of a service provision that is really interesting and helpful as you're looking at what are best practices in this space. So I am delighted to introduce Peggy Jensen, the Deputy County Manager from San Mateo, Effie Verducci, the Communications Officer, Caleb Smith, the Sustainability Coordinator. And for those of you who don't know Caleb, he's also been running the Casita Coalition Finance Working Group and local government working groups. So we've really been a beneficiary of San Mateo in so many ways, including Caleb's good leadership. Will Gibson, Planner 3. And last but definitely not least, Jennifer Duffy, the president of Hello Housing, whose work in this ADU small housing space has really been a personal inspiration to me. And Jennifer's taught me more than I can describe in this one moment about what homeowners really need to do and understand in order to be able to be successful at building small housing. So delighted to have you all. And I think Caleb or Peggy, you're going to be the leadoff hitter for this team. So I will mute myself and look forward to the show.
Thank you very much, Denise. On behalf of all of the San Mateo County team, we're very appreciative to you and the Casita Coalition for inviting us here today to share the work that we've all been doing. Why don't we go to the next slide, please? So all of our work around affordable housing, which actually started back in 2015 when our Board of Supervisors made a very large commitment to focus on this, is under the umbrella of our Home for All initiative. Home for All is a community collaborative bringing together members of all sectors of our community. We started meeting actually back in the fall of 2016. It brings everyone together to understand that we all have to contribute to the production of more housing, and that, as Senator Berman said, or Assemblyman Berman said, all housing is good housing. We need to provide housing of all different types. And actually second units, the focus on second units started way back then because we realized that that was a great way to expand housing, particularly housing that would be affordable to some of our lower income residents. Thanks, Caleb, for sharing the next slide. Just to make sure that we are staying on the right track, the cities, the county, and the cities commissioned a rent analysis of new ADUs in San Mateo County earlier this year, late last year. And we're pleased to report that many of these units are being rented at rents that are equal to very low income or low income or moderate income. Not very many are above that moderate income level. So again, this just reinforces the importance of second units or ADUs, as other folks refer them to, we call them second units in San Mateo, how they contribute to meeting the housing needs that we have, not only just San Mateo, but in the Bay Area. Next slide, please. When we began our work on second units, one of the first things that we did back in 2018 was do a community convening. We invited all the members of our community. We brought together about 150 people to hear from leaders in the ADUs. We had a speaker come down from Portland who was a leader around policies in second units. And then we had roundtable discussions. What is it that San Mateo County should be doing to promote second units? What can we as cities and local elected officials, and just citizens do to promote this work. We had the first roundtable, and then that was followed by a second. And we feel that bringing people together to talk about this, to learn about second units, significantly contributed to the positive attitude, the support that we've seen throughout San Mateo County for second unit development. As you mentioned, we were really fortunate that when the state passed new regulations related to ADUs, there wasn't much opposition in San Mateo County. Every city pretty much adopted it quite easily. Next slide, please. So just in terms of the structure of how our Home for All initiative works and how second units fit into this, you'll see on this slide that we have a Home for All steering council, which includes elected officials, both from the county, but also city council members, nonprofit leaders, representatives from our business community, and also education community, representatives from all sectors, because we know that the housing challenge affects everyone in our community. Beneath that, we have a coordinating committee, which is the county staff, which provides support not only to the steering council, but to all of our work groups. And then the second unit task force is one of the work groups underneath that steering council. Our other task force includes funding, educator housing, and climate change. So with that introduction to our work, I'd like to turn it over to Effie Verducci.
Good morning, and thank you, Peggy and Denise. As Peggy mentioned, the county has been working on several tools and resources in second units, and we'll talk about those in just a little bit. But we also wanted to highlight some of the other programs that are developed by our community partners, many that are part of the second unit task force that are intended to help homeowners with their ADU projects. One of our close partners is the Housing Endowment and Regional Trust of San Mateo County. It's also known as HART. HART's our local affordable housing trust, and it received a grant from the Bay Area Air Quality Management District to design a series of ADU plans that would be environmentally friendly and freely available to homeowners. HART has partnered with several cities in the county to partially or fully pre-approve these designs, and that will hopefully streamline the process for homeowners. For more information on their program, their URL is on this slide. It's heartofsmcadu.org. And then one of the best practices that we wanted to highlight was 21 Elements. It's our countywide planning consortium. The county and its constituent 20 cities have jointly contracted with the planning firm Baird and Driscoll to provide technical assistance and guidance to all 21 jurisdictions. This has been one of the things that's helped our communities understand the fast changing state ADU rules and trade notes on the ADU ordinance text. And then some of the programs that I just mentioned will no doubt have a considerable impact in expanding the second unit opportunities for San Mateo County residents. And then we'll hear about one in particular, as Peggy mentioned, Hello Housing in a little bit. But some of the county's biggest efforts or biggest areas of focus thus far has been on educating homeowners about second unit opportunities. While according to polling, at least 1 in 5 Bay Area residents would be open to building an ADU, many homeowners are either unaware of the benefits of ADUs or lack information or enough certainty about the process to build one. And this is where we hope that Home for All steps in. Home for All has developed several informational resources for homeowners, including our second unit workbook and idea book, pictured here. The workbook is a step-by-step guide to building an ADU. And then we've also developed an idea book, which features the stories and pictures of several families in San Mateo County that have built ADUs. It also includes their designs, photos, and other kind of details about their process, hoping that this would help inspire a homeowner to understand what's possible for their ADU. To date, we've currently distributed about 3,000 physical copies of these books. Both of those books and many of our other tools are available on our informational website, secondunitcentersmc.org. This also contains a variety of additional information to help homeowners understand the benefits and process of building an ADU. One of the features on this website that's quite popular is the ADU calculator, where a homeowner can kind of enter some fields and then see how the math might work out on their second unit project. While we're going to need to update the assumptions soon to account for changing costs, this is one way to illustrate to homeowners that a second unit can be a common sense investment in their family's financial future. And then I should also mention that except for the calculator and a few of the licensed photos, all of the second unit materials, including the workbook, idea book that are on the website, are available for free to other public agencies who want to build or adapt to similar products. We've indeed noticed a few different ADU websites around California that have been offering some of the same things. So we're happy to see that. Earlier this year, the county expanded on its previous virtual outreach efforts by making an effort to advertise second units to the general public. This was accomplished via an advertising campaign that involved web advertisements, YouTube ads, and other online and TV advertising. As a result, the Second Unit Resource Center website saw a spike in web traffic from about 150 visitors per week to over 1,000 visitors per week during most of the 4-week campaign. For this ad campaign, we were grateful for the opportunity to leverage the expertise of that second unit task force to provide us with data analysis to most effectively geo-target the audiences within the county. To give you a taste of what we did, we'll go ahead and play the 30-second ad that we primarily ran in this campaign.
A little house can bring great stability for a steady source of income, a place for loved ones to call home, or more space for your changing needs. A second unit on your property is within reach. There are now fewer ADU restrictions, and the Second Unit Center of San Mateo County offers resources and inspiration to help you realize your second unit goals. Visit secondunit.org to begin. That's secondunit.org.
And that URL is just that it goes to our same website. It doesn't change it. We just made it shorter for purposes of the campaign, and it allowed us to see also the metrics around the campaign itself. So now I'd like to hand it over to my colleague Caleb to take us through the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Effie. I appreciate you giving the overview of some of the wonderful informational resources we have here in San Mateo County. Now, we often think about the process of a homeowner being interested in a second unit as a funnel, where initially people get their first interest in the idea of a second unit, start to wonder if it might be a good thing. But then after that, people need more information to know that it's a feasible project, that it's a good fit for their particular circumstances. And eventually they need help finding an actual project team that they can move forward with on their project. So our marketing efforts really are based on the first tier of that funnel, really getting people interested in second units that we've been looking at so far. That's based off of some work that we received from a philanthropic team from Adobe Services. They provided some free consulting advice to us early on in our second unit efforts. And that helped us get this idea of the funnel as a way to walk people from being first interested in a second unit to going forward with a project. Now, in terms of some of our ways to help people get further down that funnel, get them from I'm curious about a second unit to I want to build a second unit or I will build a second unit, we do some direct community engagement. Now, some of this has been going out to partner events. You see here on the left picture from our visit to our community partners resource fair in East Palo Alto. Some of y'all may have seen the webinar Casita Coalition put on about some of the great work that our partners in East Palo Alto have been doing. If you haven't, I encourage you to check it out. We've been happy to tie in and support that work how we've been able to. So that includes sharing some of our resources at East Palo Alto's community events. And we've also, at least before the pandemic, had a great deal of success partnering with local real estate agents they would often invite us out to conversations that they would host, such as the one on the right, which was held at a library in Millbrae. A local real estate agent arranged it. We talked about second units. About 150 people came. So it's really these kinds of partnerships which help us broaden our reach beyond the people that we would normally be able to reach as a government. Now, we also followed up. We know that people who are interested in second units, the process of finding a contractor or a lender or other members of the project team can be kind of daunting, which is why in 2019, before the pandemic, we hosted a resource fair in partnership with Redwood City, where about 40 ADU professionals and nonprofits were tabling together. We also then had a series of presentations walking people through key ADU topics like zoning, like different types of ADUs, like how to pay for it. And we were gratified to have roughly 400 people come to this event from all over San Mateo County, and even one or two from as far as Southern California. So this was really our ways to help people get from I'm interested in second unit to I want to build a second unit to here I have found my project team, I'm moving ahead with my project. And we were gratified to find that when looking at second unit permit applications at Redwood City a few months after the event, we did notice somewhat of a spike. So it looked like the fair was having some actual consequences in the permit totals. Now, we've really been trying to follow up this second unit education more recently. We're actually in the middle of last night we held the second in a 3 webinar series around second unit information. We've been sharing some basic information about second units, why people built them, and some of the resources that are available for homeowners during the first 30 minutes of these webinars. And then we've been going into breakout rooms with city planners from across San Mateo County for people to learn some more specific information about how to build a second unit in their city, as well as having the opportunity to do some question and answer with their city planners. So the third webinar in that series is coming up next Thursday at 6:30 p.m. And you can register at this link if you're interested in attending. And this is actually an idea that we borrowed from our friends in Marin County because they did something very similar for their second unit outreach, I think earlier this year or last year, and they had a lot of success. And we've been pleased that a few dozen folks have been coming out to our events here too. So that's an overview of some of the more direct engagement we've done with homeowners. And it's worth noting in 2019, we were able to reach over 1,000 people through our direct engagement, in addition to the thousands more who check out our web materials. Now, we're pleased to see that there are some real consequences from these efforts. We're seeing that second unit permits have been going up and up and up here in San Mateo County. And talking with planners, everyone expects this trend to continue. So we know that some of this was no doubt due to changes in state law, but comparing our second unit permit totals to other similar jurisdictions elsewhere in the Bay Area, we see that our per capita rates of second unit construction are higher, which is why we think that our outreach efforts are having an impact. We also are, as we're looking forward, Home for All is thinking a great deal about the connection between housing and climate change. We're looking at ways to address climate change while making efforts to identify strategies for climate resilient housing solutions. We know that a big part of this is going to be locating more housing in lower risk areas. And the fact that you can add second units to already developed areas that aren't at as much risk from climate change impacts is very attractive, and another reason why second units is something we're excited about. I will now turn it over to my colleague, Will Gibson from the County Planning Department to share about a couple of their initiatives.
Thank you, Caleb. So yeah, I'm just going to touch briefly on 2 programs that the Planning and Building Department is working on regarding ADUs. And the first being the second unit amnesty program, or ADU amnesty program. So the county has both anecdotal and direct knowledge that there are a significant number of ADUs that have been built in the community that are unpermitted. And those obviously are providing housing, but we have no way of knowing what condition they're in and whether they're safe and habitable. So the idea here is to allow applicants and homeowners to come in and explore the possibility of upgrading their unit to a habitable condition without facing the possibility of penalties of code enforcement, of the removal of the unit and potentially the displacement of a tenant, which is essentially a double hit on the housing market. You're losing housing and you're creating a new demand for housing. So we allow them to come forward. We allow them to explore the program. We provide a low-cost inspection of the unit and provide a full inventory of what is required to upgrade the unit. And then at that point, the applicant can either decide this program is not for me and walk away with no penalty and no fault, or they can go forward with the program, and we provide significant hands-on assistance throughout the project. And we also waive almost all of the building and planning fees for the development of an ADU or the upgrade of the ADU. Again, this is a pilot program right now. We have been running it with a small pool of applicants, but we do intend to launch it early next year. This is for the unincorporated county only, but we do think this is a good way to get units that that are providing valuable housing, but may not be up to code, may be causing or potentially causing safety risks to their inhabitants, to a habitable condition. Next slide, please. So the second program, there are new state mandated timelines that are applicable to all the jurisdictions for how quickly we must review ADUs that come in as a single project, so not attached to a larger project such as a primary residence. We now must review and either approve or deny these ADUs within 60 days. And most of the jurisdictions are really facing a crunch right now in terms of reviewing applications. So this is this is a laudable goal. This is a state mandate that actually is intended to accelerate ADU production, obviously, and I think we'll do so, but it's a hard thing to meet. So we have started to stand up a streamlined, expedited, dedicated process specifically for reviewing these projects. We will take these in and we immediately we direct them to an outside contractor who commits to turning around their review within 10 days. And so with that expediting of the process, we think both we can meet the state timelines and also expedite the production of ADUs overall. With that concludes what I have to say. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to Callum.
Thank you, Will. I will now stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Jennifer Duffy from Hello Housing.
While Jennifer's getting her screen set up, I just want to make sure that folks on the webinar know that they can post questions to the Q&A. And when we get to that part of the webinar, we will look to your questions and make sure we get them answered. So please take advantage of that while we are wrapping up the presentations. And thanks for the San Mateo County team. Is really interesting to hear what you're doing and how it's working and what specifically is working. So thank you for that. And Jennifer, I look forward to your presentation.
Great, thank you so much. Want to make sure everybody can see my screen. And if we're good. Great. So Peggy, Caleb, Effie, and Will, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to be a partner with you throughout this ADU journey. Just a reminder, my name is Jennifer Duffy, and I'm the president of Hello Housing. We're a nonprofit housing organization operating in the Bay Area for the past 17 years. We tend to focus on creating and maintaining affordable homeownership strategies across the Bay Area, and ADUs have been such a natural fit for our mission. So Bright in Your Own Backyard is a one-stop shop ADU program that we launched in 2020 in partnership with San Mateo County to support homeowners with individualized free project management support through every phase of the ADU development process. Our funding supports up to 100 hours of direct one-on-one services that we break out across different phases of the development process, depending on where the homeowner's at in their project. We work with homeowners on what's feasible, both financially as well as based on their site conditions. We level set homeowners on the potential costs during each phase of the process, what type of financing is out there. We tend to look at the financial profile of the homeowner, and we explore different models so that they can see how those products might work for them and what they can afford right from the start. We discuss with homeowners pros and cons of different products, design strategies, and building strategies. And we work with the homeowner to identify different third-party professionals that we have vetted to see if there's a match. We review the proposals that come in, we seek clarifications on behalf of homeowners where needed, and we really like to review the contracts with homeowners before they are signed. We shepherd the project through the permitting process, and we manage the construction in partnership with the homeowner all the way through lease up. And our goal here is really to create as much transparency and neutral support through every step of the process. The San Mateo County pilot was funded with $500,000 and is now creating 17 new units of housing. And this investment and what it's been able to leverage is pretty significant in our book because it takes more than $500,000 to create one unit of affordable housing in a multifamily development. This funding was made up of $350,000 in match funds provided by the county, which then leveraged $50,000 in contributions from participating cities throughout the county, which included East Palo Alto, Pacifica, and Redwood City. Some of the basic elements about the program: it's designed to support homeowners who own and occupy the property they are adding an ADU to. We chose to cap the rents for a 3-year period at 100% of the area median income rents by unit size, which is published annually throughout the county. And homeowners can choose who they want to rent to, which we feel is a very important piece of the process because we've learned since launching, 54% of our participants are choosing to build an ADU to support multi-generational living opportunities. And then finally, homeowners who are participating in the program must take a landlord training class prior to the end of construction. The pilot set out to achieve the following goals. So, proof of concept: can support services work as leverage to induce private homeowner investment? So, private-public partnerships are not a new concept when trying to leverage limited government resources. And in this model, we set out to create this partnership with homeowners. We had a goal of producing more naturally affordable infill housing in high opportunity neighborhoods where rental housing is often quite limited. We also wanted to establish ADUs and JDUs as an important housing strategy in the county, creating a foundation for the future layering of public benefit strategies. And then finally, we wanted to expand this model across other jurisdictions. And I'm happy to state that these goals have certainly been realized over the course of our work with San Mateo County. And as a result of this incredible partnership and the proof of concept, we've been able to expand Brighten Your Own Backyard to South San Francisco and now to Alameda County. While many lessons were learned by Hello Housing and our peer ADU program innovators, here are some key takeaways from our own experience designing and launching our programs. So to start with, it's important to start with as large of an applicant pool as possible. There are going to be many reasons why applicant homeowners may not be able to move forward or have to withdraw from the program. Your marketing and outreach efforts, if you're designing a program, should result in an applicant pool that's at least 5 to 10 times larger than the final number of properties you expect to support. Our pool was about 8 times larger than the units anticipated to be completed. Your outreach efforts should also focus on creating ease and access for households who may be less likely to learn about these much needed programs. So the translation of materials in dominant languages within your communities is a critical piece, as well as working with community groups and community ambassadors that have strong ties and relationships to communities facing disparate barriers to access and opportunity. Minimize complexity where possible when designing programs. We have spent years trying to simplify zoning code to reduce barriers for homeowners to access the benefits of ADUs. And if we want to create more equitable access to homeowners to benefit from much needed programs, we need to be mindful of the complexity that we create in the application or qualification process, the restrictions we place on their properties, or the loan terms that are established to induce development. Properly size the amount of assistance low-income homeowners need. There is a significant financing gap that prevents most low-income and many moderate-income homeowners from being able to afford the comprehensive costs of building an ADU. The lack of ADU financing products that meet this sector means that legally permanent ADUs are primarily benefiting homeowners with higher income and greater assets. An incentive program intended to increase ADU access for income qualified homeowners should offer financial assistance with a high enough cap and flexible enough underwriting criteria to actually close, not just narrow the financing gap. We think it's important to pair financing with technical assistance and project management support from neutral third party to protect the investment and to ensure that the outcome is achieved. The process is complicated, and if critical funding is to flow into projects, we need to ensure that recipients have the support they need to ensure that these funds are successful in creating units. We found that it's important to have a plan to identify and vet third-party professionals who are motivated to work with the program. In our model, we created a professional registry with a companion request for qualifications that we utilize to vet professionals for their experience, their capacity, and their track record. We tend to focus on a hyper-local workforce and are deeply engaged in reaching minority-owned designers and contractors. Building this relationship and network is critical to providing support to homeowners, and the diversity in the types of products, services, and cost ranges are critical, as we learned that one size does not fit all when building an ADU. And then finally, for jurisdictions seeking to establish an ADU program, identify a nonprofit partner with affordable housing program design experience, project management experience, and ideally financial underwriting knowledge to bring needed capacity and action to our jurisdictions. And then finally, I wanted to take these last few minutes and talk about a call to action as we think about the future of ADU development and the opportunities that can support this. So equitable access to opportunity. We need more equitable financing opportunities to support lower income earning homeowners. I think we all know the limitations that exist with the current private financing tools available. The existing tools, they're not reaching borrowers with high home equity, but who have lower incomes, or newer homeowners with higher income, but lower home equity. We think we need to help induce more portfolio lenders like credit unions who can create products that account for future rents as income and contemplate future value once the ADU is built in their underwriting practices. And we are currently working with San Mateo Credit Union, who has created an ADU construction loan product that does just this. Part of what helped them move this product forward was pairing this loan with neutral project management to support the homeowner through the construction process and to monitor the construction draws. We also need to repurpose existing affordable housing resources towards ADU programs. Know your local affordable housing funding buckets and advocate for allocations toward ADU programs. We know with RHNA pressures, the time to act is now. And some of the different buckets to explore include housing trust funds. What funding is available? What are the limitations around use? If funds are not dedicated to existing projects, propose a strategy. I'm also trying to share and highlight a variety of different buckets that are currently in play in supporting ADU programs. So we have CDBG allocations, inclusionary housing funds, bond measures, tax increment or boomerang funds, Cal Home, and then we learned earlier on, we've got a new grant that's being provided by Cal HFA to support pre-development costs associated with ADUs. There's a lot of different and amazing programs out there that are truly, I think, innovative and really starting to show great examples of how different affordable housing buckets can be repurposed. And I'm just encouraging all of you to explore some of these within your locality. I know this is not a comprehensive list, but hopefully it will provide some options to explore more locally for you. And with that, I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to share all that work that's being done in San Mateo County. If you want to reach me personally, you can reach me at jennifer@hellohousing.org. And if you'd like to learn more about our programs, visit our website at hellobright.org. And with that, I'll turn it back.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. And I appreciate the call to action. I think that there isn't anyone who's part of the Casita Coalition that isn't thinking about how to do that. I don't think we've hit on the right solution yet, but I think everyone knows that's where we got to go. as Assemblymember Berman mentioned, we were successful as a coalition working with others to get money in the state budget. I think there's some disappointment about exactly how the money is being allocated and deployed, because it only goes to people who can already qualify for a loan. So it isn't actually getting to the people that you described who need it, or the people who would have a difficult time qualifying for a traditional loan. So perhaps we can go back to the state and talk about programs to assist the kinds of target borrowers that you're describing. Maybe it's something we can talk about offline. But as we talk, we kind of explore next issues, I want to bring the whole panel together. We have some questions in the Q&A, and as we bring the panelists on, I just want to thank San Mateo County again for putting this really thoughtful presentation together and for being available to us to kind of unpack and learn more from your experiences, so that others can follow where you have already been leading and had good lessons learned. Our panelists include the folks who just spoke, so you've met them already. And I'm also joined by Jared Basler, fellow Casita board member from the San Diego region, founder of Maxwell Space and of the ADU Coalition in San Diego County. And his moniker is the godfather of granny flats.
Sorry, it's covered up right now.
Yeah, we got to see your logo. So Jared's been with me on all these webinars, and between the north-south perspective and the various, he's a professional working in the ADU field, as are many of you. So I think that's a good team to start having some dialogue. So Jared, I'm going to kick it to you to see if you have questions you want to start with while I scan the Q&A.
Yeah. So, and one of this is kind of tied to one of the questions in the Q&A, but as we were talking about you're talking about the amnesty program, Lonnie brought up a question that I had as well, which is, one of the issues we've seen with kind of pre-inspections in other cities is that they have led to, violations being written up. And I know you said that, there's no risk on the homeowner. But I also know that building officials are extremely risk adverse when it comes to, fire and life safety, and the fact that, these are potentially not built to, current codes. What's the kind of mechanism for, or how are you dealing with the fact that, if there's something that's truly not safe and there's a tenant in there, how's that handled?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent question, actually. And when we say, so what we do, we say no risk, but we do assure the applicants at the very start. We will come out, we have a third-party inspector, which helps them kind of feel assured that, they're insulated from the process to a certain extent. But we say to them very clearly, we will come out and we will inventory what is required for you to upgrade your unit and make it both safe and habitable, and ideally up to code. If we see something that is immediately and obviously an imminent threat to health and safety of a resident of the unit, we will have to act on that. And we make that clear to them, and they have to accept there is a level of risk. There's no risk that we are going to say, now we found out you had an illegal unit, an unpermitted unit, now we're going to take code enforcement action just because we discovered it. Yeah. Or this is simply not up to code and we're going to take code enforcement action. That is firewalled. That is certain, but we warn them very clearly in advance. If we encounter during the inspection something that is an imminent threat to harm to a resident, we have to act on it. So be sure that you're aware of that going into this, because we can't really do otherwise.
Yeah, and I figured that was kind of how it was going to run. I would be really interested to see some follow-up data after that gets gets underway, to see how many actually fall into that category. I know that it's just having worked with plenty of building officials and code enforcement officials, it's really hard to turn an eye to anything. So yeah, just be good to see some of that data as that comes out, because I know that's something that a lot of cities are struggling with. The other thing that kind of pops up there is that, in most legalization of existing unit projects, there's only so much you can do on the front side without opening up walls.
Right. Yeah, so we do everything that we can without opening up the walls. If they will allow us to do an intrusive inspection, we will do it. So it's a little bit on the homeowner side, but we also assure them, we're going to tell you everything that we think is required to upgrade this. There may be things that are discovered along the way. And once you're in, you're going to have to commit. Once you've said, look, this is what I'm aware of. There may be some things that are undiscovered. That's true with any project that is a rehabilitation project. Once you've committed to the program, you probably will have to fix those as you go forward. But we try to be as comprehensive as possible. The inspectors try to be really thorough. And make it as clear, but there always is that potential that there's an undiscovered hazard. It could be wiring, it could be, things that are not discoverable in a non-intrusive inspection. So that's a really good question. It's hard to get around that because of the nature of these kind of pre-inspections.
But also,
we're getting a lot more questions about amnesty, and because this is clearly needs to be done in every jurisdiction, right? Every jurisdiction has hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of unpermitted ADUs, and we all know that they're there. And so can we just talk a little bit more about the building code application versus health and safety code? Because that's something actually that some Casita Coalition founders thought about trying to get into state law, that ADUs in an amnesty program didn't have to meet the building code. They only had to meet the health and safety code. That kind of exploded on us because the building code is defended by many, including people who really care more about energy efficiency than they do about green housing supply, or they don't understand that ADUs are also energy efficient and green. Yes. So there's still some confusion about like strict building code versus health and safety. Can you just describe that thought process and how you landed on health and safety and what those differences are?
So we didn't necessarily land on health and safety as the ideal. So what we want units to do is come up to full compliance with the building code. That is the ideal. And if we can achieve that under every possible circumstance, we will do so. All of the units in the pilot program have been able to reach full compliance. So we actually haven't encountered the situation where we have a unit that we take to a lower threshold of health and safety. But we believe that we have the ability to say, we will bring you up, and we are using the International Property Maintenance Code, Maintenance Code as the standard, and say if it's absolutely impossible for you to achieve full compliance with this unit with the California Building Code, we would allow you to comply with the IPMC. And what we're doing is we're not giving you a certificate of occupancy for that unit. We are offering you indefinite suspension of code enforcement for the violations that we are still aware exist in that unit. And as a county, we believe we have the independent authority to just indefinitely postpone enforcement. So we will say, we have asserted that we think this is a habitable, healthy, and safe unit. You're still renting it or inhabiting it at your risk, but we will not pursue code enforcement on this unit in perpetuity. So that's the track. It's not ideal. We want them to be legalized fully. And just, I did see the question in the Q&A. There are a couple of other paths that people can explore, one of which is figuring out when the unit was built and grandfathering the standards to that time, which changes the standards that you need to apply under the current California Building Code. We believe that is in the discretion and the authority of the jurisdictions to do. So if you can determine what the standards would have been at the time of construction, which may be significantly lower than what's required now, we can apply those. So there are different avenues to pursue, which may give you the authority not to bring it entirely up to code. But again, our desire is to bring them all up to code if we possibly can.
Great, that's great. Jared, I'm going to hand it back to you. Just wanted to understand that a little better.
Yeah, no, it's an important topic that I think a lot of cities don't understand how to do and don't have building officials that are willing to do it. So it takes a lot of coordination. And it sounds, in my mind, those kinds of projects, legalizing existing non-permitted units is what has probably the greatest variability in cost. Because like you're saying, there's only so much you can look at from the outside. And if during the, inspection after the permit is obtained, there's stuff that's identified, that just can really balloon the cost. But you also have a good funding pilot program too that maybe will help with that. Getting into kind of the funding pilot program, I was looking at the kind of numbers of those, 17 units, $500,000. Obviously we can do math. It's about $30,000 a unit. Is that something that is, what is that utilized for? And is that a, straight number across, or is it dependent on the project?
So, as I mentioned earlier, we have about 1,000 hours or 100 hours that we're able to break out with that funding support. Some of that 500,000 certainly went into program design, right? Just trying to make sure that we had really thought through the different issues that we're hearing during the community outreach processes and really designing a program that could meet those needs. But essentially, we're looking at probably a little less than $20,000 to provide all of the support that we do, which is really our time and our effort to bring project management services directly to the homeowner. There are times in certain phases where it takes more time than we anticipated, and where we're making that up is in future phases where we're able to be more efficient because of the time that was taken, for example, in feasibility and design, and making sure that we got that incredibly well dialed before moving into the permitting phase. So we have found across the units that, just based on some of our previous experience in doing a lot of acquisition, rehab, and remodeling with different homeowners, how to really think about that time and be efficient with the time that we have to offer.
Okay, so I was that it's for the project management aspect of the.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
On that, just to follow up on Jared's question, does the project management get simplified when there, since we last met, you and I, which was, I guess, probably 4 years ago now, right?
Gosh.
Real time. The whole prefab industry and the sort of plug and play ADU into a backyard, because we changed the state law to allow that, was not part of what was available at that time.
Mm-hmm.
As AB 68 with the rear yard plug and play ADU, and the development of a whole probably multi-billion-dollar industry already in California to deliver prefabs to a backyard, simplified the project management experience for homeowners. And have you seen it bring the costs down? There's sort of two ways to finance an ADU. One is to get more money, and the other is to bring the costs down into the range the homeowner can pay for it.
Yeah.
Have those helped any of the struggles you're seeing?
I want to say yes, but I will tell you it has been a little complicated. There are a lot of great products out there. I think really bringing efficiency to timeline, and certainly some efficiency to the permitting process and the efficiency of the construction process. But it is really an interesting dynamic to think about all of the different types of sites that we're working on and whether those products actually can be delivered cost effectively to those sites. And that's probably been one of our bigger barriers. The topography and the geography that exists throughout the county is pretty diverse. And we have found that, access has been a real issue for homeowners. The idea of taking on additional costs to procure, permits to close down the streets so that you can have a crane come in and drop that back into your backyard has been a really limiting factor. And many of the products, even when they're panelized, for example, those components still need a certain amount of distance between the side property line and the main home to be able to make it back into these backyards. I'm going to say that's been probably the primary challenge that the homeowners in this pilot were facing. We explored all those options. It's one of the first things we end up talking about when we get to a site, is to really identify what's feasible as it relates to the landscape of different products out there.
And what I was going to respond to Denise when she asked that question was project management is much more client management than anything else.
For sure. And, I think there's some great customer service that's created in those products. But I would say, if I had a call to action, is they need to get more transparent in their actual pricing. I think that there are a lot of indirect costs that are associated that are not necessarily public, that back to the goal of transparency and really making sure homeowners understand what they're choosing. making sure that those indirect costs are really well spoken to are an important piece, I think, of those products having more success.
I can get into a topic that Caleb and I like to discuss if there's anything else out that you would like to, Denise. But
just to follow up, so have any of your 17 been a prefab, or were they all site built?
We have a few that are panelized, so components being built offsite and then assembled on-site. We certainly have different conversions, so it's all site built. But I would say dominantly, we've ended up with a lot of preset plans that have been successfully used again and again at different jurisdictions, not pre-approved, but preset plans where, the homeowner is able to make some various modifications, and then we can take those plans out to the larger builder community. But I would say we've got some that are panelized. We have yet to have one that's full modular that's worked in our particular pilot, and then a lot of site built right on site.
And then is the county's pre-approved plan program, I realize it's very new, actually, right? And you're only working with a universe of 17, so you're not able to speak to the whole universe, but are people using those plans? And maybe that's a question for Will. Are those actually coming in on a permit application? Do you think that piece is working?
So the unincorporated county has not pre-approved any of the plans yet. We're working with Hart on that, and I'm not sure any of the jurisdictions actually have. I think this is a process that is ongoing. So that's to be determined. We're not certain, but we're hoping to get to the point where we have a suite of pre-approved plans that we can use. And it's not just Hart. We have builders asking us constantly, can we get our plans pre-approved? So there's a large interest out there in the developer community to get plans approved so they can speed this process along.
Yeah. One caveat, and it might not be popular, but it's important to share, is that, this is a pretty significant investment that homeowners are making. The costs of construction are not small. It's a really significant investment. And when it comes to that level of investment, we are finding time and time again, being able to customize rises to the top pretty quickly. And that takes away some of the efficiency and the goals of the pre-approved plans. I think that it is important to continue to explore them. I think it's important to continue to look at what kind of designs are rising to the top and continuously being seen at different permitting jurisdictions, because I think those have a lot of value to create more of a push and a pull of this opportunity for homeowners.
yeah, and this was the topic that Caleb and I were going to get into a little bit since we've had plenty of discussions on this, but for all of us as well. One thing that kind of goes back to, a lot of the kind of promotional work and educational work that you've done. There's obviously, as you were saying, that the customization of a unit or something you're going to spend $200,000 to $300,000 on is extremely important to most homeowners. I'm just wondering if there's a lot of the educational and promotional materials have testimonials and case studies with homeowners that have gone through a very, curated design process with a designer or architect. I would love, as things start to roll out, to see some more case studies and testimonials on homeowners that are using the pre-approved plans. Because I feel that in a lot of jurisdictions, not necessarily saying that you're doing this, but a lot of jurisdictions will do all that those case studies, testimonials, education to present the idea of pre-approved plans. And that's a completely different experience for a homeowner as opposed to, a curated design process. You had mentioned, Will, that they're not pre-approved in the unincorporated county. It looks like there's about 5 cities, or you want to jump into that, Caleb?
Yeah, so the program was developed, as we mentioned, by our nonprofit partner, Hart, the Housing Development Regional Trust of San Mateo County. So it's their program. They got the grant. They hired the architects to come up with the plans. Now they've been working with the cities to get pre-approval. I believe a couple of cities have fairly thoroughly pre-approved them, and a couple more have sort of done partial pre-approval, so a little bit of streamlining along the process, but they still have to go through most of the steps. It is a fairly new program, so I'm sure they are going to be following and trying to get some case studies and results out of that. It's a little bit early to really draw those from there because it's just launched. But one thing that I thought was interesting that they've been doing is that for the first, handful of cities, they did a little bit of a traditional pre-approval path where it's like, we come up with the plans, we submit the plan set to the city planner looks at them, and then the city planner says, yes, this is approved. However, one of the interesting things is that now as they're working with more communities here in San Mateo County, and remember, we have 20 cities in the county of, about 750,000 people. Hart has said that what they want to do moving forward is that they want to make an agreement with the city that they're going to work with a third part, that they're going to sort of mutually agree that instead of having each city approve, go through its own approval process, they'll all agree to work with a third party contractor who will review the plans on behalf of the cities and using the city standards, but using that third party contractor who will do the reviews for all the cities that pre-approve it moving forward, with the idea that that could help sort of streamline the pre-approval process. So as a way to sort of reduce some of the difficulties that come with getting a lot of cities, some of which are very small, to pre-approve plans, that struck me as an interesting idea. And I think it'd be interesting to see how that works out.
Yeah, it's definitely anytime you can kind of consolidate those reviews, even if it's, those third-party plan check companies can really help. One thing that I was in, again, I know this isn't your program, so just trying to get a better understanding. We've had lots of conversations about, who owns the plans and who supports the plans. I've taken a look through the plans. And it looks like, there's a release of liability, and then there's also stuff that needs to be provided by, an engineer. So I'm wondering is there a path of support with the original company, or is it a go find your own?
My understanding is that the homeowner would be putting together their own project team typically on that. If I remember correctly, the firm that they hired to come up with the architectural plans has some experience with multifamily plans. And I think that's sort of their normal area of practice. They do have previous experience with single family ADU designs, which I think is why they qualified for this particular RFP. However, I think that Hart didn't want to steer people into saying you have to go with this particular person to help with site plans, that kind of thing. So once again, this is one of the options that are out there. It might be a good fit for some people, but from San Mateo County's perspective, we know that different homeowners are going to have different circumstances, which is why we've done so much work, also connecting people with other options that are out there, like through our resource fairs, because we know some people are going to want something that's a little bit more customized, or it's just different than what Hart's put together.
Yeah.
I have a question about homeowner outreach and the digital campaign that you did, because it's been raised at Casita Coalition that in order to really do homeowner awareness at this level of the state, it's going to be very hard to do resource fairs, for example, in a state the size of California. But there could perhaps be a digital campaign that at least raises awareness, so that, and then provides additional resources, maybe by region. So you sort of help that way. Is that something based on your experience with your own digital campaign that you think would be helpful at raising general awareness, both of the law and the ability of homeowners to take advantage of it, but also really for homeowners to see ADUs as a helpful part of the housing solution, rather than sort of be afraid, either because they got something on their next door complaining about state law telling people what to do being bad, or because it just seems too good to be true. And so that, most people's natural sense of self-preservation is like, I get all these Instagram ads about ADUs. It all seems kind of sketchy to me. So is there a role, and this really maybe is for all of you, since you did that experience, was it a helpful thing? Do you think there's a role that we could play at a kind of statewide homeowner awareness campaign that would be helpful?
I definitely think there is a role, Denise. I think the general awareness of how statewide laws have eased, promoting and allowing second units now in a broader way would be really valuable information that I don't think has kind of diffused through the communities that may be interested in second units or are going to experience second units being built in their neighborhoods, and can have a better understanding of, kind of what access neighbors can have at this point in the process that has significantly changed since 17. In San Mateo County, our advertising really focused on Caleb mentioned the funnel. Our campaign focused on folks that were aware of the benefits of second units and were either curious and wanted to explore it, or had been exploring it and could dive right into using some of the tools that we've developed. And we wanted to really broaden awareness of those tools and the process. But we consciously stayed away from kind of just general awareness with the thought that that would be much more effective at the more regional or even statewide level because of that kind of statewide blanket of ease. And then, kind of related to one of the questions in the chat and also to your question here, we haven't found that general awareness of the option of ADUs has been a big barrier for folks that we have talked to directly. The barriers are usually kind of more in depth. So, concerns about their neighbors' reactions or their site being kind of feasible, how to go about the process, even sometimes being intimidated by the city or county kind of planning process. And then just the costs very much, of course, construction costs and the uncertainty of long-term from property tax assessment implications and the uncertainty that's built around that, but also committing at the outset to, an unknown kind of ongoing cost on that side. And so that's where we focused the development of our resources around. And that's what we keep hearing is, the challenge.
Great, thank you. Well, we're at 12:15. This has been fascinating. We could go easily another hour on this, and I think we've only barely scratched the surface of people's questions, but I want to be respectful of your time. So Jared, do you have any last question you want to be sure to get in?
There's nothing that, I can think of. I think you guys presented a lot of different programs, which is really great that there's so much that you're doing around ADUs and successful programs. Obviously, as the county, you can't get into a lot of the individual jurisdictions, actual policies and process, but certainly appreciate the amount of work you're doing to help all the cities within your county have a pathway to, a more streamlined process.
Yeah, thanks you guys. You're doing great work. And I look forward to kind of checking in maybe a year or so and seeing how some of these new programs that you're about to launch are actually working and whether there are models in there that we could, share out with other folks around the state. So again, thanks for your time. We're really grateful for all the work you did and for the work you're doing. So I think it's great. And I know this will help other places figure out how they can best use their limited resources to make a difference. So thank you. And I just want to do a few business notes for Casita Coalition folks. Our next webinar is Friday, November 19th. We will feature the city of Oakland that has a combined series of programs that they are launching. And we look forward to hearing all of the details about their new programs and their pretty in-depth ADU study that they did as a precursor to their program design about what homeowners really needed. And then our final presentation will be kind of year in review of the best practice webinars we've conducted and what lessons we've learned that are helpful for jurisdictions or ADU advocates in other places. That will be presented by Josh Abrams from Barrett and Driscoll, who I think was working on the 21 Elements team with the San Mateo County folks, and has been helpful with a number of jurisdictions in their ADU program design, and has reviewed all of our webinars and is working on lessons learned as a kind of year-end summary. If you've missed any of our webinars, and we got questions today about how do you find these, they're available on the Casita Coalition website and on our YouTube channel. You can search Casita Coalition and find the webinars if you want to see any of the past webinars for the jurisdictions listed. And then finally, we're a coalition, and we do our work because of our members. So if you like what we're doing, please log onto our website and join the organization. It's how we keep track of our friends and also stay in touch. We will be rolling out some good member tools in the next year so that your membership payments are worth your while. And we look forward to sharing those with you probably in the first quarter of next year. But more importantly, your work and your help helps us do the work of spreading small, equitable, inclusive housing in every community throughout the state. We couldn't do it without you, without your volunteer hours, and without your help. So thank you all very much for what you do. Many of our speakers today are active Casita Coalition members, and we're grateful for your help. Be sure to friend us, like us on social media, where we're active on all channels. And if you're interested in sponsoring an upcoming webinar, please reach out to our staff or our Executive Director, Tom Limon. Thank you all very much for your participation today, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.